Have you ever looked at your baby photos and wondered, that little baby is me, but why can't I remember any of it? Your first smile, your first birthday, your first word, your very first step. Every one of those moments really happened. You lived them. You felt them. You experienced them. Yet somehow, your mind remembers none of them. It's almost as if someone quietly erased the first 3 years of your life. But what if no one erased them? What if those memories are still there, hidden somewhere your adult mind simply can't reach? This is the story of one ordinary boy who set out to solve one extraordinary mystery. Neil was cleaning his room on a quiet, rainy afternoon when something unexpected happened. An old photo album slipped from the top shelf and landed on the floor. Curious, he picked it up and slowly turned its dusty pages. Each photograph revealed another forgotten moment. There he was, a tiny baby laughing in his mother's arms. Another picture showed him taking his very first step. His parents looked happier than ever. Neil couldn't stop staring at the photographs. He smiled, and then suddenly whispered, "I know this is me, but why can't I remember this day?" That single question stayed with him for the rest of the evening. Later that night, while having dinner, Neil looked at his mother and asked, "Mom, what was I like when I was a baby?" She smiled warmly. "You cried every time your father left for work. You loved the sound of rain. And every single night, you would only fall asleep if I sang you the same lullaby." Neil laughed. But a second later, his smile disappeared. "How do you remember all of this?" "When I remember absolutely nothing." That night, the question refused to leave his mind. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Hours passed. Slowly, his eyes became heavy, and before he realized it, he drifted into sleep. Suddenly, Neil found himself standing before an enormous door that stretched high into the darkness. Above it, glowing silver letters slowly appeared. The Memory Vault. The giant door opened with a deep echo. Behind it was an endless hallway filled with thousands of doors. Each one represented a different year of his life. Age 5. Age 8. Age 12. Age 17. Neil walked toward the door marked Age 10. The moment he touched it, it opened. He saw himself laughing with friends. Another door revealed his first day at school. Another showed his birthday party. Every memory was crystal clear. Then he reached the very first doors. Age 3. Locked. Age 3. Locked. Age 1. Locked. Age 0. Completely sealed. Neil pushed with all his strength. Nothing happened. He searched everywhere for a key. There wasn't one. Just then, a calm voice echoed through the silent hallway. "You're looking in the wrong place." Neil turned around. Standing in the shadows was a mysterious figure dressed in white. Its face looked almost human, yet strangely timeless. Its eyes glowed like tiny stars. The figure smiled. "My name is Aeon. I am the keeper of human memories." Neil took a cautious step forward. "If these memories belong to me, why can't I open them?" Aeon looked toward the locked doors and answered softly, "Because they were never destroyed. They were simply written in a language your adult brain can no longer read." Neil stood there in complete silence. Then he asked the question that would change everything. "If that's true, what really happened inside my brain?" Aeon smiled. He pointed toward another glowing doorway at the end of the hallway. "Come with me. The journey begins where every human memory is born." Neil followed Aeon through the glowing doorway. The hallway disappeared. Suddenly, he found himself standing inside a massive city. Towering buildings were still under construction. Bridges ended halfway. Roads connected to nowhere. Thousands of tiny workers hurried in every direction, building new pathways every second. Neil looked around in confusion. What is this place? Aeon smiled. This is your brain. Neil frowned. My brain? It doesn't look finished. Exactly. When you were born, your brain wasn't a completed city. It was the fastest construction project on Earth. As they walked, giant cranes lifted enormous beams into place while glowing pathways stretched endlessly in every direction, every single second. Your brain was creating millions of new connections. It was learning faces, voices, emotions, and everything about the world around you, faster than at any other time in your life. Neil watched the city grow before his eyes. So if my brain was learning so much, why can't I remember any of it? Aeon pointed toward a huge building that was only half finished. This is the hippocampus. Think of it as the librarian of your brain. Its job is to organize your experiences and store them as memories you can remember later. Neil looked carefully at the unfinished building. So the librarian wasn't ready yet? Not completely. Your brain was incredible at learning, but it wasn't yet ready to organize your life's experiences into long-term autobiographical memories. Neil slowly nodded. So my memories weren't missing. They were simply never filed properly. Exactly, but that's only part of the story. Come with me. There's something even more fascinating. Together, they walked toward another glowing doorway. As Neil stepped inside, everything changed. The next room was unlike anything he had ever seen. Thousands of floating pictures filled the air. A baby's smile, a mother's face, a warm blanket, rain falling outside a window, a toy rolling across the floor. Neil reached out to touch one of the floating memories, but something felt strange. There were no words, no sentences, only images, feelings, and emotions. What is this place? Neil whispered. Aeon answered softly. This is the silent world. When you were a baby, you experienced thousands of moments every single day. You could see, you could hear, you could feel, but you couldn't describe those experiences with language. Neil slowly looked around. So I experienced everything, but I couldn't tell myself a story about it. Aeon smiled. Exactly. As adults, most of our memories exist as stories. We remember who was there, what happened, when it happened, and how it made us feel. But babies haven't developed language yet. They experience life without creating a story they can later tell themselves. Neil looked once again at the floating memories. So that's why nothing comes back when I try to remember. Exactly. The experiences were real. The emotions were real. But your brain had not yet learned how to organize those experiences into the kind of memories your adult mind searches for. Neil took a deep breath. For the first time, he finally understood why those early doors remained locked. But another question immediately appeared in his mind. If those memories weren't destroyed, where are they now? Aeon became unusually quiet, without saying another word. He pointed toward one final doorway at the end of the room. Its walls pulsed with a mysterious blue light, almost as if it were alive. The answer is waiting inside. Neil slowly stepped forward. As the great door began to open, thousands of distant voices whispered together, and for the very first time, Neil wondered if his earliest memories had been watching him all along. Neil slowly stepped into the glowing room. It wasn't a library. It wasn't a city. It looked like a living forest. Millions of glowing branches stretched in every direction. Some branches were growing rapidly. Others were quietly disappearing. Neil looked around in amazement. What is this place? Aeon looked toward the endless glowing branches. This is how your brain grew. When you were a baby, your brain created an incredible number of neural connections. But as you grew older, it slowly removed the connections it no longer needed. Neil watched as smaller branches faded away, while stronger ones became brighter. So my brain was actually cleaning itself? Exactly. This process is called neural pruning. It makes your brain faster, smarter, and more efficient. But during that incredible rebuilding process, many of the pathways leading to your earliest memories disappeared. Neil slowly looked back toward the locked doors. So the memories were never destroyed. Only the roads leading to them changed. Aeon smiled. That's one of the best ways to understand it. They continued walking until they reached a beautiful mirror glowing with soft light. Neil looked into it, but instead of seeing himself today, he saw a tiny baby reaching up with a joyful smile. Without thinking, Neil whispered, I know this baby, but I don't remember this moment. Aeon gently replied, You don't remember the event, but you still carry what it taught you. Neil looked confused. What do you mean? Aeon gently touched the mirror. The image began to change. A mother hugged her baby. The baby immediately stopped crying. Another scene appeared. A father smiled, and the baby laughed. Then another memory appeared. A familiar lullaby softly filled the air. Aeon looked at Neil. These are called implicit memories. They are different from the memories you consciously remember, instead of becoming stories. They become part of how you feel, how you react, and how you connect with the world around you. Neil stood silently. So, even if I can't remember those moments, they can still shape who I am? Aeon smiled. They already have. Neil took a slow breath. Everything was beginning to make sense. Suddenly, another memory flashed before him. He saw himself falling while learning to walk. For a brief moment, he smiled. I remember this. Aeon looked at him kindly. Do you really? Or have you watched that family video so many times that your brain created a memory from it? Neil paused. He remembered watching that old video again and again throughout his childhood. Maybe it wasn't a real memory after all. Aeon continued. Our brains are incredible storytellers. Sometimes they fill in missing pieces using photographs, home videos, and stories we've heard from our families. Neil looked down. So the biggest mystery wasn't that I forgot. It was believing that forgetting meant those years didn't matter. Aeon nodded. Your earliest years were never empty. They were the years that built your emotional world. They taught you trust. They taught you comfort. They taught you love. They shaped your personality. And they did all of this long before you were able to remember them. Slowly, the glowing memory vault began to fade away. Neil looked at Aeon one last time. So, will I ever remember being a baby? Aeon smiled peacefully. Probably not, at least not in the way you hope. But perhaps that's exactly how the human brain was designed. Some memories are meant to be remembered, and some are meant to become part of who you are. Everything around Neil slowly disappeared into a bright white light. The next morning, he opened his eyes. He was back in his room. The old photo album still rested beside him. Neil picked it up. He looked once again at the picture of himself as a baby. This time he smiled. For the very first time, he wasn't sad that he couldn't remember those moments. Because now, he finally understood something far more important. Those memories had never truly disappeared. They were hidden inside every smile, every fear, every habit, every relationship, and every part of the person he had become. Sometimes, the most important chapters of our lives are not the ones we can remember. They're the ones that quietly write the story of who we become. So the next time you see a picture of yourself as a baby, don't think of it as a forgotten memory. Think of it as the beginning of an incredible story. A story your heart still remembers, even if your mind does not. Until next time, stay curious.